You're listening to the God Life Culture Podcast, where faith
and what's trending collide. Welcome back to the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. This is Eddie.
What's up, everyone? This is Miguel, and we are so excited that you are tuned in for another episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. We want you to take this moment right now to hit that subscribe button if you are not subscribed. If you are watching us on YouTube, we want to thank you so much for tuning in to our YouTube channel. Click that like button, share, subscribe, do all of those things. As we're excited to get into today's conversation. We're excited that you are all listening, that you are choosing to start your week or end your night or start your day listening to the God Life Culture Podcast.
Yes. And you know what? We've been doing this thing for the last couple of weeks, and we're going to continue to do it as long as new music is pushed out there by our people. And it is our music feature of the week. So Miguel, share with the people, what is today's music feature?
Yes. So Maverick City Music and Kirk Franklin have teamed up. They have put together a brand new album titled Kingdom Book 1 that will be released on June 17th. They have released one song from that album titled Kingdom, and it's featuring Naomi Rain and all the people that we love from Maverick City Music. One of the amazing things about this collaboration and this song is that they took this whole idea of what a prison performance is and they took it to a whole different level. The album is 11 tracks and it all was recorded and put together on the grounds of a Florida prison. Yeah. So just a few months, earlier this year, they were seen at a Florida prison and kind of like, doing music and different concerts. And I guess they were working on this project and putting it together. So definitely, go check out Kingdom. It's from their upcoming album titled Kingdom Book 1. And one of the, cool things that we love about Maverick that we've spoken about them before is their diversity, right? And how intentional they are with that. And, one of Maverick City's, people on the team, Tony Brown, basically said that one of the goals of this project was to create awareness around the topics that affect the community that we represent as Black and brown people. So he says it's important that we're able not just share our songs, but also share the heart and the lives that these songs are coming from. Most of us in some way have been impacted by these issues. And as we mature as artists, the things that matter to us the most need to take precedence. And this is one of them. So Maverick City and Kirk Franklin are also going on tour, which we will be at their New Jersey concert, right? At the Prudential Center on Sunday. So we will be letting you guys know how that goes. But definitely check out their upcoming album, their new single, and don't forget June 17th. Kingdom Book 1 will be released.
If they named it Book 1, that means there's a Book 2, hopefully, in the works as well. And, the concert thing is something that we are very excited. Last year, Maverick City had a concert in Brooklyn. We weren't able to make it. I think you spoke about it. We had a couple of friends.
In our FOMO episode.
that did attend it and, publicize that on their social media. So we looked from afar. Right. But this time, we were given the opportunity to go. We're going with our spouses and some other friends as well. And just really excited about that. I think it's our first concert since before the pandemic. Yeah. So that's a whole big thing. The idea of just being in it takes me back to like years ago when they used to do like these events at the Izod Center in New Jersey called Battle Cry. And I remember the first year I went, I think it was like 18. And it was the first time that I was in an arena with a group of people who were there, with the sole purpose to just like worship God and to get together to learn more of the Lord, that looked absolutely different from me. I looked to the side, none of them looked like me. If I looked to the front, none of them looked. It was like a very cool, I grew up in Brooklyn, going to a Latin church. So, Latinos, we come in all shapes and sizes and shades and all that other stuff. But regardless, still like seeing people of different languages, of different heritages and cultures, that was a really cool experience for me. So I'm thinking, so it took me back to that. So I'm thinking about being back at a really big, stadium worshiping and listening to music and just being crazy and, fangirling out, because that's my intention. Like, I want to go crazy, because it's like, we haven't been in a big concert in the longest. It's gonna be a bunch of people there that are all going excited, looking to have a good time. So the idea of just being in that diverse setting with one set goal in mind, I think is gonna be really cool.
Yeah, and the idea that it's Maverick City, right? Fairly new artists and kind of like on this they're on their peak and wave right now, and then you have someone like a Kirk Franklin who's been in the game for a long time.
Yeah.
So I feel like you get kind of like that best of both worlds in that concert. Funny enough, in 2016, I actually went to the Prudential Center. So this is going to be really cool because I went to do spoken word at the McDonald's Gospel Fest. Now it's going to be weird being there kind of on the other side because when I went, we didn't really get to like sit to watch it. I was behind backstage the whole time. So this will be kind of cool, and that was like definitely the highlights of my whole spoken word journey. Being there and being at an arena that big and doing that definitely marked my life. So I look forward to being there again and having all those feels, but obviously this time to enjoy that concert.
Yeah, you know what? And keeping up with the theme of diversity, one of the things that we cannot deny is, just the topic of diversity, whether it is in a workplace, whether it's in your community, whether it's at your church.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that we think is really important to talk about is, what should a church do to diversify itself? What does that look like? And, the different things that you can do. Because I think that sometimes, when we think about diversity, we may only think about race.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about like diversity in the congregation, I think it's very easy for people to be like, oh, that means that I'm going to need to, get the world map and then start checking off. I have people from here. I have people from there. And I think that diversity is something that goes a little bit more, that includes race, but it's also a little bit more broad. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, like you said, people think about is race, is physical appearance, right? Yep. So going off the physical appearance, conversation a bit, I remember a few years back, once we started revamping our kids ministry, right? That was something that I remember I had in mind when I kind of took that over and started it. It was very much like, I wonder if these kids, as they, engage in these services or in just like the videos that a lot of times our churches will play for our children to watch, about Bible stories, and they see other kids, are they seeing themselves represented? Do they see a kid that looks like them? And I remember at that time asking, some of the kids that were kids just a few months prior, now they were like tweens, they're like 12, right? And asking them, when you were in your kids ministry, when you remember, did you ever question or ask yourself or, did you feel like you saw yourself being represented in the way you look and people that have your hair texture or, features and all of these things? And I remember to some degree, there was a little bit of a lack of, they really didn't see someone that looked kind of exactly like them or reminded them of themselves.
Yes.
And that really stuck with me when I had asked them that question. So when looking at, what curriculum are we going to go with, to show, the videos and the worship videos and all these things, I remember that was something that was really important to me.
Yeah.
And, the curriculum we use, they're called Orange Kids Ministry. And that is one of their key goals, diversity. So, I mean, you'll see.
No, yeah. I was going
to, like, all shapes, all sizes, all colors, all different hair textures, short, tall, older, younger.
Yes.
Like, they really do a great job at diversifying what our kids are watching and seeing. So someone like your son who has great curly hair can see another guy up there who has like almost the same exact type hair.
That's what I was going to say.
Worshiping, talking.
You beat me to it, which was the idea of, I think that was the first time. I mean, he's only 5 going on 6, but let's be honest. I'm 33, going on 34. That's the first time I saw someone that looked like my son.
Yeah.
In the front, leading a church or whatever, caramel complexion, long curly hair. Usually it's always someone with like a really short haircut, like prim and properish, what's deemed in most conservative situations as professional or like acceptable or whatever. So I remember in the last series before this one, the main guy that was kind of leading that series with the kids was a dude that looked like my son. So I thought that was very interesting. And I know it was very interesting for him as well, because he's going through his own journey as well as a kid who is predominantly in a community, like in school, where they don't look like him.
Yeah.
None of the boys have long curly hair like he does. And sometimes he feels a little weird about that, but then seeing someone in the front leading, being funny, but also talking about God's love, I know that also has a positive impact as well. And that's the kind of diversity we need in our churches as well, when it comes to the congregation and the people, which isn't only about filling up the pews with people that look different. It's also, who do you have in the front leading? Is that a reflection of the diversity in the church as well?
Yeah. I think, when it comes to, church leadership and all of those things, it can be tricky, because I think a lot of times, which is a point that we'll talk about later, but it is common for people to get together and congregate with individuals that kind of look like them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I feel like if you were to look at our church, let's say, I think our church is a little bit more diverse now, right? But when you look at it, there is a majority, right, of like what the people look like, or what what language they speak, and all of that. I think now, more recent years, we're hitting more of the bilingual, right, kind of wave, where there's people that know both English and Spanish. They understand Spanish, can't speak it, really, are stronger in English. But I really do think it's important that within our leadership, there is that diversity and representation, not only with race and physical appearance, right, but also within age, right? I think if we're speaking, specifically, let's say, about a youth ministry, I think in the youth leadership, there should be individuals who aren't, you don't want to say like super young, but young enough to understand the culture that our youth are experiencing, whether it's the lingo, the language, the new shows that come out on Netflix, that it's like, we should talk about this maybe, or this is a good topic to bring up, and all of that. But then at the same time, I do think you need those older individuals a part as well, where it's almost like, the ones that kind of have been through things and been through similar stuff, just probably not as technologically advanced as we go through it today, right? Where I'm sure years ago, there was no streaming platforms, where now everything's on your phone and all of these things, So I think that balance is super necessary and important. And I think a lot of times what we end up seeing, unfortunately, is the unhealthy clash between these groups of people. Yeah. Specifically maybe when it comes to age, right? Where it's like the younger and the older, and there really is no middle ground, no meet in the middle, no compromise, and it just causes more problems. And really, it's the lack of diversity and understanding that we need to be diverse. We need to vary what we do. We need to change what we do as the years move on. And as, we have certain groups of individuals in these ministries. For instance, when it comes to youth, right? You may have one year where, a few years where, there's certain needs that your youth have, and we address those needs. In a few years, you may notice, hey, the needs have changed. It's not what it used to be anymore. How can we pivot and address now these new needs? That, I think, in my opinion, is also diversity. Yeah, absolutely. Right? In addressing the needs of the people within the ministry.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about, like, sometimes there's this clash between the young and the old, or the new wave versus the old wave and stuff like that. Sometimes we even see that amongst people who just have a different way of thinking. There's people that are a little bit more creative, and there's other people that are a little bit more textbook. And then, when the textbook person is trying to do something by the book, but the creative person thinks maybe we got to go outside the lines and stuff like that, there's that, that crash as well. And I think the reason for that is because I think that diversity is sacrificial, in the sense that sometimes you have to put what you think is the best way of doing something to the side and give opening and wave to try something new. So, you may think that the textbook way of doing something is the best way to do it, but here comes somebody else with this other, like, abstract way of tackling a situation or an idea, and you kind of got to be like, you know what? Okay, let me I've been doing it like this for the last 36 years, but let's try it this way again. And, it's also humbling in that as well, where sometimes you have to realize, I may not have all the answers. We may need, a younger person to come in and give their point of view. We may need somebody that has a different background or life experience to come in and, to switch it up a bit. You may need, maybe your team is full of guys. Maybe you need the women to join that team. As you should never have a team only full of guys unless it's like a men's ministry specifically, but sometimes you need a woman's point of view to come in and diversify it and give you a new outlook and a new sense of doing things. And, it may be humbling. You may have to sacrifice, what you feel about the situation, but all in hopes of it being more beneficial to try it in a different way.
Yeah, diversity looks at the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
Because it can become so easy to focus on those little things. This is the way it's always been, or, and not all the time is it always so negative that people just, it's just, this is the way it's been. So this is the pattern we follow. This is a routine we follow. This is what we do. I don't think all the time, individuals who maybe are stuck to a routine are so negative about it, where they have ill intent. I think oftentimes it's just, this is what we do and have always done, where you have to be okay with now, how can we diversify this plan? How can we change this plan to address the specific needs of the people that we have now, or the specific needs of our church, that, what they're going through right now. So I think it's important to understand that when we talk about diversity, you sometimes have to, come out of the situation and look from the outside in to fully analyze and see, is this working? How can we make this better? How can, we grow this, or how can we improve, these areas? Because like you said, it is sacrificial. It is humbling, right? When you have to kind of admit, man, we've been doing this for so long and maybe haven't seen the results that we want. We may have to diversify our worship. Yeah. We may have to diversify the music that we're playing. For some, it may be like, a language thing. We do a lot of Spanish worship and we don't really have some English worship, but we have a lot of people coming that don't understand Spanish. How are we going to address that need? Well, let's talk to our worship team. Let's see if they can include at least an English song. Let's see if they can include songs that can go in both languages, right? Yeah. So there's so many different ways that you can, again, address these issues, but you have to be willing to kind of look from the outside in to give those thoughts and those opinions and really see like what is happening and what you're doing and see, is it really working? Yeah. And I think you have to be honest.
Yes.
Diversity can be something that can be scary for some individuals because again, it requires change, but you have to be honest with yourself, with the people around you, and make sure that it's intentional. Yeah. Right. Because I think the worst part is, and I've experienced this, right, where, I've been on, I've taken my students on different trips, on missions trips and things like that. And there was a moment where I remember they specifically asked for the Black and brown kids if they could take them with myself to have us photographed so they can include in their like promotions for their missions organization, because they don't really get Black and brown students or missions groups, but they really only requested the Black and brown kids, right? And then it was very much like they wanted us to stand a certain way and look like we were doing something that we weren't really doing at the time, just so they can slap us on a website. And I remember telling them at that time, and this was like 2-3 years ago, like, no, we're not going to do that. That's actually not a good idea. I was like, if you want diversity tomorrow while we're out there actually working, then go and take pictures and make sure you take pictures of the whole team. Yes. Right? Because just because you have an individual who, let's say, is not Black and brown doesn't mean, well, they're not diverse. You really have no idea what their background is. You have no idea, what their talents, capabilities are, their needs. You really don't know those things, So it has to be intentional. This can't be something you slap on a church program to show like, oh, we do this, know, or, we want to take pictures of a certain group of people to show that we have these people within our church. Yeah, no. It has to come natural, because at the end of the day, individuals can see, right, when something is authentic, when it's real, and when it's rehearsed, when it's staged. Yes. I remember another incident was they wanted me to like walk down a hallway, right, with 2 other teachers, but they specifically wanted me to be, and this was at a different a different, scenario. They wanted me to be in that mix simply because I was the brown one, of the group. And it's like, no, I'm not going to be in your picture, and it's those moments where you have to say those things, but kind of tell them why, because nobody may ever tell them,
true.
And again, it's almost like there's no excuse for acting that way. There really isn't an excuse, not knowing or not. I didn't know that was offensive. I feel like we live in an age and a time where, especially as Christians and church leaders, that is not an excuse that I didn't know that was offensive. I didn't know I shouldn't have said that,
Yeah, no, it's 2022. Educate yourself. Really. That's what it comes down to. And I think that that's something that churches have to be mindful as well, that in their strive to be diversified, that they need to also be sensitive and genuine with what they do. You can't just be we're going to have all the people of color come to the front and sit here so it looks bien llenito. We're all like the colored folks. It's like, no, you can't. That's not appropriate. And then also don't give positions to people or give jobs or responsibilities to people just because you want to check off the box that, our team is, 75% non-people of color, but we got a good hefty 25%. Like those are the things that you don't want to do because it's going to cause strife. It's going to cause strife within the people that are not of color, that are looking at people as diversity hires. Like the only reason you're working here, only reason you got that position is because of your color, not by your merit, your skill, or your talent. And it's also going to give issues with the people of color because they're looking at it as you just want me as a poster boy, as your token brown person, as your token Latino, as your token this. And, we see that even in churches, which is why that we have to be very conscious and intentional and genuine with what we're doing and what we're trying to do, because we want to create an environment where people feel safe. We want to create an environment where people feel welcomed, that they see people that look like them, that they feel that it's a church that kind of gets them and their ideas, because at the end of the day, we're all followers of Christ, but we also have our own culture in which we carry, right? So then I think that's the balance and the struggle that, churches that have a big scope of different people that go to those churches have, a lot of work to do to balance out making sure everybody feels comfortable, but also make sure it doesn't feel like a mockery. It's like they'll do like a Latin night, but then have a whole bunch of people doing Latin stuff that's not Latino. So it's kind of like, why do you have the people with no rhythm doing the Latin stuff? That makes no sense. It's kind of like, if you want to have a Latin night, to celebrate Latin identity in the churches and have the Latin music, there's a lot of salsa that's Christian, there's a lot of merengue that's Christian, reggaeton and stuff like that. You can't do that, but it can't be done in a form of mockery. It's like if you want to do like gospel and stuff like that, definitely a way to do that. Have a soulful night. Absolutely, you could do that if you want to, whatever. But it's also make sure this is being done from a place of genuine, like, like we just want to like give everybody an opportunity to be celebrated and not a mockery out of people and their culture.
And I think it's important to even analyze what's being done in your teaching departments, right? So for instance, when it comes to kids, right, and even teens, we know that not everyone learns the same way.
Yes.
So if we have, let's say, a 45-minute Bible class, whether it's on a Sunday, a night, class or whatever that we have, are we just having our students sit down and listen to us the whole time? Because that may work for all of your auditory listeners in the room and for the students that are able to sit and process information for a long period of time and not move. But then you have your kinesthetic learners that need to be moving and active and need to, go up to the board and write something, need to be picked on for an example and be used as, a demonstration or something. How are you addressing the learning needs of your students within your classrooms, whether it's in Bible school or whatever? I think it's very important to remember that when we want our young people, our teens, our kids to learn from God's word, yes, this is not as complicated, let's say, as school is, right? But there is a certain level of we want to make sure that they are getting the best out of it, which means you may have to show a video, you may have to do a song, you may have to have them do some type of craft, you may need to have them write something, you may need to have them get up and stretch, midway through. You may need, some of your visual learners to, go up to the board and draw something, or, go up to the board and be part of a live example or demonstration of the point you're bringing. So all of that takes thought. right, and foresight to see how can I diversify what I'm teaching to make sure that every student and every class and every ministry is understanding and grasping the information and not just sitting there, right? And I think when we talk about diversity, even when our preachers or pastors teach and preach from the front, it's very difficult because they're just speaking the whole time, right? But then we have certain preachers and pastors who use visuals. We'll have a backdrop. We'll have certain words come in and out. We'll have certain points be highlighted, or we'll, kind of be preaching and then stem away from that preaching to kind of give a personal testimony or something that ties in with the message. So there's ways to diversify what you do. And I think a lot of times the biggest hurdle or obstacle is that people don't know what to do. So they understand they need to be diverse. They understand the need for diversity. They understand that something needs to be done. They just don't know how to do it and, what to do, right? And I think one of the things that, in my opinion, helps me when in the various things that I do is to look at what other people are doing, right? Look at what other people are doing, what other, ministry leaders are doing, and see, just to get ideas, not to imitate, not to replicate, not to copy, right? But to be inspired and kind of learn and be educated as to, well, this seems like it works really well here. Wow, I didn't think of, presenting a sermon in this way, or I didn't think of doing this type of youth night where, it does address the different needs of the youth in my ministry, So it takes for you to kind of, again, step out of the norm, step out of what you're used to, and maybe you have to go visit another church and just see what they do and how they engage their members in worship if you're a worship leader, or how they engage their youth and their children within their ministries. And I really do think that's okay, and that's how you, see and pick and choose what works best for your people and where you are.
I mean, they literally have conferences for that. Like our pastors just went to a conference earlier in the year where they took 3 days. It was a pastor's conference, and they were sharing ideas and different things that other people do and what works for them. And, you have to really go out there and, see what's happening and educate yourself as well, because obviously, we spoke about this before, prayer is definitely important. And you can pray to God, Lord, give me ideas, Lord, help me, Lord, this, Lord, that. But also God has resources out there for you at your disposal, even in the simplicity as using the online web for that. There's so many different churches and ideas and things that you can see. And then you can see what we had this conversation, I think, with Ruth Rodriguez last year, the idea of looking at what other people are doing and then figuring out a way to make that applicable for you and what you can do in your church as well, all for the benefit of you and your congregation. That's really what it is. It's really not for show. You're not trying to, make it on the magazines or, become viral or anything like that. It's really like, what can I do to benefit the people that I have with us so that it will, nourish them and it will make them grow and it would help them, ideally get closer to God.
And one of the things, going back to that, Maverick City song, Kingdom, one of the lines that they say is, if you've ever wondered what heaven looks like, it's looking like me and you. And if you've ever questioned what heaven sounds like, just let it fill the room. And they repeat that a few times. And I think what's so powerful about that is, in looking at the video, there's people from all different backgrounds in this video belting out, what does heaven look like? It looks like me and you. And it, again, gets you thinking about, that ultimate day when we do make it to heaven, how the Bible literally says there will be people from everywhere. You know what I mean? And individuals from everywhere that I'm sure look differently, sound differently, speak differently, and all of those things, where that, I think that is the ultimate message. That is the ultimate, gospel message. The idea that we have a gospel that should minister and include everyone. It's not for a specific group of people. It's not for a specific sounding group of people. It's not for a specific denomination even, right? But that gospel message and the gospel and the power of the gospel is available to everyone and for everyone. And a lot of times I think we can get so caught up in our bubble of, Christians that look like us, that sound like us, that we can even fall into the trap of looking at other people who may be Christian as well and just do things differently and judge, right? Yeah. And, fall into that category of just like, oh, they can't be Christian because that's what they do. And we're not supposed to be doing that, or we don't do that, right? Yeah. Where it can easily fall into that category, right? I think it's important to just remind ourselves the importance of diversity, the importance of recognizing that Jesus himself, when he was on earth, ministered to everyone.
Yes.
If you go to all the different miracles, all the different stories of individuals, it was men, it was women, it was children, it was young people, it was people who were sick, people who were broken, people who, weren't treated fairly, people who were sinful and, caught in the act of their sin, individuals who had health crisis and people who had deaths. And, he literally went to everyone, even the individuals that he wasn't supposed to speak to and the places he wasn't supposed to go to, he went.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think looking at Jesus as the ultimate example, that should be us.
Yeah, it's like you keep saying, it's biblical. In Matthew we see how Jesus, commands them to disciple all nations. It's not only the people that look like you, it's the people all around you, and even the people that you have no idea how you're gonna get to. You have to figure out how to reach them. Yeah. But I also want to also make it clear that as we said in the top of the episode, that diversity isn't only about race. So you may find yourself in a community, where it's a bunch of people that they all look like you physically. Yeah. Okay, so then that's great. But then there's ways to make sure that your church is diversified, like we said, with education, age, gender as well. Is it only a bunch of grown old people that are leading the church and they're not giving opportunity for younger folk? Vice versa. Is it just young people and they're really not paying attention to the older people? So diversity is a lot more than just race and culture. It is a very important part of it. Yeah. But if you find yourself in a situation where your community isn't as diverse as it could be, then all right, so then make sure that you're also looking at all the other possible ways that you can diversify your church, whether it is, like we mentioned before, through the music, whether it is through your teaching tactics, your educational tactics as well, because we're really just wanting to create a space that really caters to as much people as possible. Obviously you can't really cover all the bases, but you try your best to cover as much as you can, because then the next church is trying their best to cover as much as they can. The other church is trying and eventually you're gonna find where you feel good and when you feel safe and when you feel like you're at a church that you can grow in and that you can serve in and really learn more of God.
Yeah. So, and again, when it comes to even that idea of diversity, recognizing that not every church will offer every single thing that you want. Yep. Right? That it won't meet every expectation or every need, right? You may want specifically a certain type of person to be doing something or leading something, and you may not get that. Yep. You may want the worship to be a certain way, and that church's worship style is diverse, but it doesn't meet that need, right? It's okay to, recognize, okay, they don't do this, but they have really great programs that, I enjoy and really benefit us in this area, right? Or like you said, there's so many churches where you may find one then that offers those things that you're looking for, but again, a lot of times when it comes to diversity, patience is also, a big quality and characteristic that you have to have on both sides. When you're the individuals trying to diversify things and it seems like you're just not making it ends meet, it's not working out the way you want, you're going to need patience. Keep trying, keep working. People will get it. People will come. But then when you're on the other side and you're just like, nothing's happening, there's no this, no that, we don't do this, we don't do that, look at this, look at that. Patience. There may be things in the works. There may be things that are being put, to action. But again, diversity, I think, is super important. And we've seen when it's done right, and we've seen when it's done poorly.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you once again for tuning in to our episode. Diversity is very important, and there's different ways to make sure that your church is being diverse and catering to your community at hand. As always, you can reach us on our social medias.
Yes, find us on Facebook and Instagram at God Life Culture Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, leave a rating. Let us know what you enjoyed about the episode, your thoughts about diversity, and definitely stay tuned for more episodes to come.
Yeah, so thank you once again for tuning into the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. That's God Life Culture. Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.